Thank you for joining us if you're able to. It's Monday evening for church. We were kind of busy earlier. I wasn't sure when we would get home. I aimed for 7:30 start, but we were all in here sitting and ready to go by 7, so I hit go live. If you at some point join us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Twitch, it's because of Restream.io. Restream.io helps me to stream to all those platforms at the same time through their browser. This is Scriptural Salvation Baptist Tabernacle. My name is Andy. Welcome to my living room. Seated directly in front of me is Paul. To his left is Richard. We have Steve. Like I said, I'm Andy. To my right is Grace. And then off camera, you have Hannah, Jacob, my wife Liz, the dog Sweetheart, and the baby Leah is in the swing sleeping. Hopefully, she'll stay sleeping. And we will go ahead and do our first song. Lord, I lift your name on high. All right. Let me get this ready to go.
He has a choice, you know.
Okay. keeps going. All right.
Hi, Shadow.
We are going to continue in our study in the book of Genesis. We've been following the study of Joseph and how, although all these terrible things have happened to him, he's managed to keep the wonderful attitude that he has, that he does the best at everything that he is, no matter what. And this week, we will see some of his dreams fulfilled.
Like in the beginning where everyone has to worship him.
Ah, very good, Richard.
Oh, come on.
Did it again. Richard, can you hit the button?
Oh, so they're gonna have a
I didn't do that. I want.
They're gonna have a family reunion.
Okay, we will start with Psalm number 33. I heard that somebody would want to read through the verses. You. All
Shout for joy in the Lord. Oh, you righteous, praise befits the upright.
Yep, very good.
Give thanks to the Lord with the
Liar.
lyre. Make melody to him with the harp of 10 strings. Oh, sing to him a new song, play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts.
For the word of the Lord is upright, and all his work is done in faithfulness.
He loves righteousness and justice. The earth is filled with full of steadfast love of the Lord.
By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all their hosts. Richard.
He gathers the waters of the sea as a harp. He puts the deeps in storehouses.
Yes.
Let the earth fear the Lord, for all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him.
Oh, for he spoke, and it came to be. He
Commanded.
commanded, and it stood
Firm.
firm. The Lord brings the
Counsel.
counsel of the nations to he frustrates
Frustrates.
the plan of the the counsel of the Lord, the plans of his heart to all generations. To be continued.
Yep.
To be continued. This is our week of
All right,
communion.
so we're going to do our monthly communion as we were commanded.
No, it's
What?
They're already doing that.
Probably somebody should have told me before I started. Maybe last time we had it, we didn't like it a month ago. Yeah. We should have said something then. Okay.
Oh, too late.
For I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night when he was betrayed, took bread. Okay.
don't like this. Grab a regular piece of bread and yes, that's what you forgot about me. Oh my gosh. Next year.
And with a big somewhere. Take it. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me."
And now we feast.
Who thinks it's bread that has pre-garlic on it? You better have the plain stuff. So,
Yeah,
That's the bread juice company.
let me taste it.
When
in the same way, he also took the cup after supper, saying,
Oh, say.
"Take a sip out of this. You don't have to drink."
And, yeah. Please don't make it explode.
And then remember how to sing
What the
the
heck
six
happened?
pack?
Yeah.
Mom,
Oh,
that's weird.
well, take a drink of the foam, I guess.
What kind of great juicy
Weird.
worldwide
It's fermenting.
Fermenting? Yeah. You know, that takes 45 days or so. Don't ask me how I know that. But
Nice one, Steve.
What?
Good one.
That's the bread juice company.
yes.
What?
All right. This is our North Country Red that we've been using.
What? Can you please leave the what?
Welch's.
When did you get it?
The fire pit.
When?
When we last had a party.
Oh, okay.
You know the last time we burned something hot was this one.
Yes. Yeah, it's clear her tooth. Isn't that water?
Yes.
This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me.
Sippity, sippity.
We never even did the syrup. You just tasted it.
For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. And as I like to remind everybody, communion is about remembering Christ's sacrifice for us on the cross. His body that he went and was tortured, and the blood that he shed for us. Having communion reminds us of what he was willing to do for us. Okay.
Must be a special chicken.
And that comes to us from 1 Corinthians 11, 23 through 26. And now we will listen to Genesis 42, verses 1 through 6.
Genesis 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt." Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground.
Why do you look at one another? So right off the bat, Jacob comes out and all the sons are there. And he goes, what are you staring at one another for? There's grain to go get down in Egypt so we can live. There's a famine here. Some commentators say that Jacob came before his sons, and he says, there's grain down in Egypt. And then the reason why this verse is here is because the brothers were all looking at each other, all dumbfounded because their father said Egypt, because they knew that their other brother was down in Egypt. No, I don't think so. I think it's just Jacob's like, what are you guys doing? We're dying up here. Go down to Egypt and get grain. I don't think it had anything to do with any type of. Paul, you need to be careful not to hit the microphone with the grape juice when you pick it up. All right. No, stop playing with it.
Just there.
How far into the famine was this? Remember, there's 7 whole years of this famine after 7 years of everything being great. Well, we don't know how long we're into the famine. There's no indication. Everybody was going through, living their lives great. 7 great years of great harvests and lots of food, and everybody's living it up and tossing ones out the window as they're driving to work, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And, blowing away all their money at the casinos, and people paying extra.
Dad, I think you're getting a little too carried away.
But then, all of a sudden, the famine hits. Remember they said that famine was so bad that you were going to forget everything good that came before it. Well, famine hits. But like I said, we don't know how far we're into this we are. But this also proves that the famine was felt in the whole known world at the time. Because Canaan, the land of Israel, was not in Egypt, but Egypt had the grain. How did they know about Egypt? Some people say, well, pretty simple. Abraham had taken several trips down into Egypt when things had been bad, when there were famines in the past. Abraham and Isaac both went to Egypt. And it was the Arabian traders that were going to Egypt that came through Canaan that they gave Joseph to in the first place. So it's not far-fetched to think that Jacob would have learned or known about that there was grain in Egypt.
Also like flat land.
Yes, it was simple to travel. Caravans going back and forth. They wouldn't have seen Egypt from Canaan, but actually, what's interesting here that I was thinking about, we're into this famine, and I was talking about how everybody's living up their lives and having a great time when things are good, but then all of a sudden the famine hits. It was the same thing with Noah. During the time of Noah, right before the flood came, everybody was living it up. They were having a great time. Then all of a sudden, here comes the water. So it just shows to go you that at any time, things can turn. 10 of the brothers, so we have Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, and Naphtali, the 10 brothers that are older than Joseph. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, for he feared that harm might happen to him. And Jacob, remembering how he lost his son Joseph, the last time he sent Joseph out with his brothers, he doesn't want to lose his youngest son, Benjamin. So, and then as I was researching this, I came across the King James Version of the same verse, and it says, But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, Lest peradventure mischief befall him. I have a hard time even reading this. The syntax and the grammar are horrendous. Not in modern English. Yes, you can read it, but that's not how normal people talk.
You can understand it.
This is ridiculous.
So the next time I'm afraid of you going out and getting hurt, I will say, I don't want peradventure mischief to befall you. It's kind of like the time that Richard looked at me and said, it would behoove you.
That's 1900. 20th century.
So actually, King James was written in the 1600s. Anyway,
I know that.
the English is rough. Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him. As Richard pointed out, this lines up with one of the dreams, where the sheaves of crops are out in the field, and all the other sheaves bow down before Joseph's sheaves. Joseph's brothers walk right into where Joseph is selling the grain to everybody, and they bow down before him. They were foreigners there trying to stay alive, and the only way that they felt they could do this was to show respect to the great official that was there. So they come in and they bow down before the official. But it lines up perfectly with the dream that Joseph had and had told to them some 20 years before that. Looks like Leah's raising her hand. You have a question? And that verse that had come from chapter 37 says, Behold your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. And that is exactly what happens here. Joseph's brothers walk in because they're trying to get grain, and they bow down before Joseph. And listen to verses 7 through 17. No, not that. Okay, 7 through 17.
Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. Where do you come from? He said. They said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. And he said to them, You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. They said to him, No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies. He said to them, No, it is the nakedness of the land that you have come to see. And they said, We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. And Joseph said to them, It is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place, unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested whether there is truth in you, or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all together in custody for 3 days.
Sentence will be that.
Richard, really, right now?
Richard, just go sit down.
Joseph recognizes his brothers. They must not have changed much. They must have still kind of looked the same. They were still shepherds out in the fields in Canaan, and even though it's been 20 some odd years, they probably still look the same as their high school photos. So I still have people that meet me from 20 years ago and say, "Yeah, you still look exactly the same." So it's not far fetched. He treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. And this is, he wanted to know if they were sincere. He wanted to know if they had changed. Here were the very brothers that put him in a slave caravan and sold him to a slave master some 20 years before, and then went and told their father that he was dead. The very brothers that wronged him were coming to him to get help. But they did not recognize him. Joseph had been Egyptified. They put him in the Egyptian wig with the Egyptian makeup. He looked like a local. There is no such word as Egyptified. I just made it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, just put applied at the end.
it's stupid.
I made it up. Hey, you in the front. Okay.
Shut up.
Hey,
Sorry.
Richard. Mr. Peanut Gallery. Anyway, Joseph had been in Egypt for so long that they had made him a local, and he had started to fit into the culture. And now he was like the second in command. So he had to look like the people that he was governing.
Oh, you don't want someone with a different culture.
And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed. Now, this one I always had trouble with. It never made sense to me that they would say this and then talk about the brothers. I mean, there was already a dream that was fulfilled, right? The sheaves coming in and bowing down. Well, what this pertains to is Joseph is trying to make the second dream come true. Now, the first dream was the crops all coming out in the field and bowing down to Joseph's crop. The second dream that Joseph had while he was still with his brothers was he dreamed that the sun, moon, and the stars would bow down before him. The sun, moon, and the stars being all of the family and his father. That hasn't come true yet. So the crops part of the dream has come true. The other one has not. So Joseph is working toward making the sun, moon, and the stars bow down before him, having his father there with his brothers bowing down before him. So what he does is he accuses them of spying, and they are at his mercy. He's able to do whatever he wants with them. He tests them a little bit, and one of them says, "We are honest men." I got to chuckle at this.
Ha!
Yeah, right? The people that sold him off into slavery and wanted to kill him.
Then really? Yeah, remember?
Not honest men to me.
Oh, not right now. So they look at him and they say, "We are just 12 humble brothers. We live in the land of Canaan. Our little bro is at home with her dad, and one of our brothers is no more." And they figure that this proves that they are not spies, that they tell him this information. Why would we be spies if we're 12 brothers and we left one of our brothers at home? They think that it's harmless to tell them of their little bro and their dad. Why would this Egyptian care about it? Why is he giving us such a hard time? But Joseph looks at them and says, "None of you will leave until I see those two, the brother and the dad." And Joseph goes ahead and locks him up. It says he puts him into custody for 3 days.
Just 3 days.
Well, we'll see here. We will listen to verses 18 through 25.
On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. So your word will be verified, and you shall not die." And they did so. Then they said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to replace every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them.
Do this and you will live, for I fear God. I feel this is a subtle hint by Joseph. Here's a man in the pagan land where they worshiped a pantheon of gods, and he looks at his brothers who knew about the one true God, and he says, "Do this, for I fear God." A normal Egyptian would have said, "For I fear the gods." So I think this is a subtle hint that by Joseph that he knew their God and that he worshipped him. If you are honest men, you guys said it. You told me you're honest. Now prove it to me. My experience, well, if anybody else says otherwise, Joseph, the one that was sold into slavery and sent to Egypt, leave someone here, go get your brother and your father, come back, but on the way, you can take some grain home in the meantime. Here, we have Joseph framed like Jesus again. He doesn't complain, and he shows his brothers abundant mercy. He didn't have to do any of this stuff for them. He didn't have to show them any type of compassion. He didn't have to, what? Who? You? Oh. Paul, get your mother a tissue. Oh, you're playing charades.
Sweetie's raising her hand.
Remember that these brothers wanted Joseph dead, and they sold him. Joseph was wronged at every turn in his life. But does he seek revenge against these brothers? No. They have a conversation with themselves in Hebrew because they figure there's an interpreter there. You'll remember Joseph's Egyptified. And so this interpreter is there. So they figure that this great Egyptian official with all this power can't speak Hebrew. And they start to talk amongst themselves and they go, "We're guilty. We saw him begging for his life. We should have just let him go, but we didn't listen. That is why all this stuff is happening to us." Whoops, that's the wrong button. And what they're doing is what I call the Jonah causality. In the book of Jonah, as Jonah is running away from God, he's on the boat and the giant storm comes, and all the other sailors know that this storm had to be because somebody wasn't obeying God. Because Jonah wasn't doing something right, terrible things were happening. And these brothers, just like that, know that because they've done something wrong, they're being punished for it. Remember Reuben's half-hearted attempt? I compared him to Pontius Pilate. He said, "Let's not kill the boy, let's throw him in a pit." like that was that much better. And Reuben's plan was to go back later and look like a hero to his father, just like Pontius Pilate, who said, well, I'm going to turn Jesus over to you, even though I know he's not guilty. But if you end up killing him, it's not on me. Well, I had the power to stop it. Reuben had the power to stop all this, and he doesn't do it. Pontius Pilate has the same with Jesus. All this time, Joseph is pretending ignorance, pretends he doesn't speak Hebrew. And he hears his brothers, especially his brother Reuben, say we shouldn't have done this to him, and it makes him cry. He sees that his brothers are starting to turn a corner. Now, some people try to figure out why Simeon is the one that's taken and bound, because he's the second oldest. There's two thoughts on this one. Because Joseph was the second youngest, and he was thrown into slavery, Joseph wanted the second oldest to stay with him. Or, because Reuben came up before his brothers and tried, with heavy air quotes, to not have Joseph killed, Joseph spares Reuben and has the second oldest bound. But then Joseph says, you know what, let them go back, but I want everybody's money to be put back into their sack so that they go home with all the money that they came here with. But the brothers don't know about it. So they're sent home with extra provisions and all their money to go home to their father, and they don't know anything about it. To me, Joseph cares about their safety. It shows to me kind of like the prodigal son. You know, Jesus told a parable where the son goes out and he leaves the house and he spends all his money and he has nothing left, and he goes back to the father and he says, all I want is to be your slave to work in the field. These brothers and the father welcomes the prodigal son back in and says, no, you're my son, you've come home, I'm going to treat you like the son that you should be. Joseph has these brothers treat him terrible. He should have sought revenge on them, but instead he shows them all this love and gives them grain and does nothing but wonderful things for them. He's willing to accept them and love them even though they did this to him all these years ago. This is some mercy. He should not have given them any care in the world. He had the power to just take them and throw them into prison when they showed up to beg for grain. This is compassion. He knows that his family is suffering, even though they all did terrible things to him. Compassion of what is doing the right thing, even when it's, you know, nobody knows that you're doing the right thing, and he's showing them grace. And grace, in a biblical definition, is getting gifts that you do not deserve. It's getting a gift that's not due to you. The brothers don't deserve all this stuff from Joseph. He's showing them mercy, compassion, and grace. Genesis 42, 26 through 28, short little section. No, wrong button.
Wrong button.
How did I end up here? Oh yeah, because I 26 through 28.
Then they loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. He said to his brothers, my money has been put back. Here it is, in the mouth of my sack. At this their hearts failed them, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us?
Traveling home from Egypt to the promised land of Canaan was not, 2-3 hour trip like it would be in the car. This was several days of traveling on a caravan route. And they needed to stop some of the way there. So they stop at an inn that was along the way. And when they go to look at their sacks that have their traveling provisions in it, the money that they were supposed to pay Joseph to get the grain was sitting in their bags like it was never taken by the Egyptian officials, or it looked like maybe they stole their money back. And like I said, this was the money that was supposed to be used to buy their grain. So why are they panicking? Why would this make them panic? Why would this be something that they wouldn't see as good? This is a normal response that many people have when they receive grace or the gift that they don't think that they should get. Instead of accepting this gift because they think it's too good to be true, they instead expect a reckoning. They expect to be dealt with harshly, and they know that they deserve wrath. There are many people that have trouble accepting God's gift of grace because they don't feel like they should get it. They don't feel like they've done anything good enough to get anything good from God. This must have been a fun ride home. The last time they all went out together, Joseph, they sold him off into slavery. They leave Benjamin home, and then they're on their way back to Egypt, and now they left Simeon, the second oldest in Egypt. So the whole way they must have been thinking about this. Verses 29 through 34 are actually a repeat of what happens last time. They come in and they tell their father what happened in Egypt. But like I said, it's a repeat. It's all the conversation that they had with Joseph. But they did something different this time when they came home. They walked in and they told their dad the truth. Instead of telling him that Simeon got picked up by a flock of birds and flown off into the desert, and that's why he didn't come home with them, they say Simeon's there in prison with this guy, and he wants to see our youngest brother to prove that we're not spies. So kudos to them for actually doing something different and trying a different path. So remember that time, Paul. What time is that?
4:58.
Okay, so I have to get to that timestamp.
Oh gosh, here I go
Now
again.
listen to verses 35 through 38 to finish off the chapter.
We're skipping a
So like I said, we're not going to listen to that one piece because it's just a repeat of what we've already heard. So verses 35 through 38 at timestamp.
This is
Right?
end,
Right?
and you shall trade in the land. As they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, You have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin? All this has come against me. Then Reuben said to his father, Kill my 2 sons, if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol.
That is how the chapter ends. Obviously, it's a 2-parter, but And when they saw their bundles of money, they were afraid. Like I said, this is most people's reaction when they receive grace from God, when they receive gifts that they don't think that they deserve, they expect doom. They expect to be treated bad because they think they're bad people. They don't see the good, only the bad. And there are many people that go through their lives thinking that they're just such bad people that Christ could never love them, and they never become Christians because of this. Here's God giving them gifts that they don't deserve, showing them mercy and showing them compassion, but they refuse to accept it. It's the same thing that the brothers are doing here. Instead of being happy that not only did they get extra provisions of food and they got their money back and didn't have to pay for it, instead of seeing this as a good thing, they see it as they've done, we deserve something worse. You have bereaved me of my children. When the brothers came home initially, after Joseph was dead, they told him that he had been mauled by an animal, and that was why Joseph was gone. Does Jacob believe that it was the brothers that did something to Joseph? He's talking to the brothers. He said, "You have bereaved me of my children." Does Jacob know that it was them, or is this just subconscious? He probably associates bad things happening when all those brothers get together, but I don't think Jacob knows that it was the brothers that did anything to him.
It's like a second causation.
Yes. Now remember, Simeon is still in the Egyptian prison, and he thinks that Joseph is dead. Every time you guys get together, somebody doesn't come home. No, you're not traveling down there with somebody else, because somebody else will get taken away by a flock of donkeys or something. And yes, flying donkeys. You gotta watch out for the flying donkeys.
Flying donkey.
Yep. True. Gotta be careful with it. Don't take Benjamin with you because he's not going to come back. I know it's you boys. Every time you go out to have fun, watch those sheep, somebody loses an eye. It's wild.
Flying donkeys.
All this, so then Jacob
God.
says, all this has come against me. What though? I mean, Jacob has his health. He's been blessed by God with all his wonderful things. He has a large family, 4 wives, but yet he still says, "Woe is me, woe is me." Jacob is selfish and self-centered. He doesn't see the big picture that things, he's still alive. He's an old man. And he has this wonderful big family with all these riches, and he lives in the land of Canaan. And he's got, he's on God's team. Jacob should be happy and thankful for the things that he had, not worried and woe is me about the things that he perceives as terrible. This time, Reuben actually steps up. He puts his money where his mouth is. He says, "Listen, Dad, I'll take Benjamin, put him in my care. If he doesn't come back, kill my 2 children. I didn't do what I had to do last time to save Joseph. I wanted to look like a hero, so I half-hearted it." I wanted to use a different half term, but I use hearted instead. So my half-hearted attempt last time was a failure. Reuben wants to make it right because he feels guilty. He knows that he should have done more with Joseph. He wanted to fool everybody. Instead of actually trying to save Joseph, he just said, "Put him in that pit over here, and then when everybody's gone, I'll come back and look like the hero and bring Joseph home." This time he wants to save the family. He feels guilty. He wants to make things right. But Jacob, in his self-centered, everything is wrong, the world is against me life, doesn't see the big picture. He doesn't see the forest through the trees think of Joseph and all of the stuff that Joseph has had to go through, and yet he still is upbeat and loves the Lord and is thankful for everything that he has. But Jacob, who is blessed with a big family and has all this wealth, thinks that his life is terrible. And there's got to be some sort of life lesson in there somewhere, but I just can't bring myself to find it here. And that's what I have this week. And kudos to you if you can think of what the other half turn that I wanted to use in place of half-hearted. I can. And we will finish off on the song Shout to the Lord, which is a really nice praise and worship song.
Wrong one, Daddy.
Yep, that is the wrong one.
This is Steve. Did we sing this one?
All
He has a choice.
Lord, there is none like you. All of my days, I want to praise the wonders of your bounty. My comfort, my shelter, tower of refuge and strength. Let everywhere all that I am never cease to worship you. Shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. Mountains bow down and the seas will roar at the sound of your name. I sing for joy at the words of your hands. Forever I love you, forever I'll stand. Nothing compares to the promise I have in I want to praise the wonders of your my shelter, tower of refuge and strength. Everywhere, all that I am, never cease to worship you. Shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. Mountains bow down and the seas will roar at the sound of your name. I sing for joy at the work of your hands. Forever I love you, forever I'll stand. Nothing compares to the promise I have in you. Shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. Mountains bow down and the seas will roar at the sound of Well, thank you for joining us, for communion that we had this week, for learning about Joseph's mercy, compassion, and grace. And these are all characteristics of God and Jesus, and how he applies them to our lives. But a lot of people just don't see it and they just reject it outright. I hope that everybody has a good week. Next week will be July the 4th. Is it really July 4th next Monday?
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm working.
All right, so you're working. Like I said, I'll maybe we'll take next week off. Yeah, we'll take next week off for July the 4th. Everybody enjoy our independence and forget you, Britain. And
Wow. Dad.
and then we'll convene together the week after. We'll aim for 4 o'clock
On Monday, the 11th.
on Monday the 11th. Yes,
That's when we start marching band, right?
or the week after, whatever. But he doesn't do marching band until 6.
Yeah.
So if we do church at 4, we're fine. So we'll aim for Monday the 11th. Have a happy uppity colonist day and forget you Britain Day and Independence Day and
And good.
and
Good